Welcome back to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast, a show all about inspiring smart, busy women to put their happiness at the top of their to-do list. Join your host and life coach, Dion Thompson, as she chats with amazing women who have figured out how to make their happiness a priority, and more importantly, what it's really like to go from hot mess to awesomeness. And now, on with the show.
Welcome everyone to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast. I am your host and life coach, Dion Thompson. So let's meet my guest, Stephanie Calahan. So Stephanie works with service-driven entrepreneurs, visionaries, and all sorts of remarkable professionals who are experts in their field to help them get out of their own way, which you know that I love, and build highly profitable businesses and extraordinary lives filled with impact and meaning. Yes, please. Now, she is slowly getting used to the idea of being an empty nester and lives in Illinois, USA with her husband and rambunctious Havanese dog, who I was forewarned we may see during this podcast. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, we might hear him at a minimum. He's snoring right now, so we should be good.
Awesome. Now, Stephanie, we met online via Instagram, as people do. And I was instantly drawn to the work that you do and the way that you share your wisdom with the world. Love that you have been coined the problem destroyer, because I'm a huge fan. And I'm like, yes, I love connecting with people who are just constantly in that visionary state going, yeah, no, not that. Nope. Like, let's move on to the next thing. Let's move forward. Let's move through. So I'm super, super excited that that's sort of your essence and your energy. Now, I also know that you weren't always considered the problem destroyer, and that there was a time in your life when problems were really weighing heavily on you. And of course, the name of this podcast is Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast. So I would love to hear about the elements of your journey that brought you to this place where now you are a revered coach and you're helping thousands of people all over the world. And yet I know that there was a time when that wouldn't even be considered possible. So let us in. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey and what brought you here.
So I think it would be helpful to start pre-Calahan Solutions, which is the name of my business, which way back in the day, I did corporate consulting, and I worked with Fortune 500 companies in a consulting firm, right? And when I started working there, I honestly thought that I was going to retire from there, right? I mean, that was my intention when I started that work. And I was really fortunate and blessed to move up in the organization really quickly, probably too quickly. And I was young with a tremendous amount of responsibility. By the time I was in my mid to late 20s, I was responsible for about 300 people that reported to me. And I loved what I did. I really did. But then there came a point where the company went public. They were a privately held firm. And when they went public, there were some things that changed within the corporate culture. And I was starting to be asked to do things that they weren't illegal, but they were definitely on my ethical border, and they definitely conflicted with my values and the type of person that I wanted to be in the world. And it got to the point where it was a pretty toxic environment, right? I mean, so much so that I took it, there were lots of hours in this job. Like I averaged 80 hours a week. I kid you not. It was a crazy working environment. But that wasn't what really got to me, or wasn't the trigger for me. I took a day off and I drove 2.5 hours south to a university to do recruiting. Now, did you catch that I said I took a vacation day to go recruit for the company? Like, my whole way of thinking about work-life balance, like, what's life, right? I went to work when the sun was down. I came home when the sun was down. And it was actually one of the moments in doing that recruiting where I was making job offers and I felt guilty for making the job offers. I'm like, wait a minute, I should feel pretty good about, hiring great people and offering them an opportunity. And I felt super guilty. And it was on that ride home that I contacted my husband and said, "What would you think if I left?" And 3 months later, I had quit my job. He had quit his job. We had sold our house. And with toddler in tow, our youngest was 2.5 years old, we moved and I started my business. I do not advise that people jump quite in the same way that I did. I'm very grateful that everything ultimately worked out, but that was not the most planful way. It was definitely a trauma response from a couple years of things just really not being great. And I mentioned, I moved with a toddler in tow. David was 2.5 when we moved, but part of that toxicity was me not really being able to be a part of a lot of his firsts. Daycare providers were telling about stuff, and that again wasn't who I wanted to be. It wasn't the type of parent I wanted to be. I wasn't the type of wife I wanted to be. I had a really super short fuse, like really short fuse.
Mhm.
Um, all the deep, wonderful, rich relationships that I had prior to starting this corporate job had basically fizzled away because all I did was work and travel and travel and work some more. I didn't have the capacity to maintain any relationships that were important to me. And so I started Callahan Solutions. And now that you could say was the hot mess part, except for the fact that I didn't recover. I didn't even recognize that I was a workaholic.
Mhm.
I didn't recognize the toxic mindsets that I had in place um, when I left corporate. I kind of left, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be able to do all these things that I wasn't able to do before, right? So I move. I have a brand new community, little kid, new business, and by the way, I'm going to go and volunteer all over the place.
Right.
I became a court-appointed special advocate for kids that were taken out of their homes by DCFS. I became a rape crisis counseling and advocate that would go to the hospitals and work with the survivors as they were going through those horrible tests and talking with police and a lot of other things, right? So I didn't recover from workaholism. I didn't recover from perfectionism. I didn't recover from people pleasing. And I definitely didn't recover from understanding my own worth because I had tied working hard to my value as a person, right? So I left the toxic environment and then just created kind of a prettier toxic environment of my own.
Right.
I was doing all the things that I wanted to do, but I was still not in a healthy boundaries. I was still not in a healthy place. I said yes all the time to stuff that I meant no to.
Mhm.
And it all came to a head in 2009 when I got really, really sick. And it was progressive in getting sick, right? But by the time 2009 rolled around, the health professionals that I was working with said, Stephanie, um, you are shutting down and you are probably not going to see 2010 if we don't turn some things around. Um, I literally had different parts of me on the inside deciding not to function. So to kind of give you an example of what life was like then, the home that we live in has a standard size driveway. It fits two cars next to each other down the length. And our mailbox is at the end of the drive. And I would walk to the end of the driveway and have to sit on the curb for like 20, 30 minutes before I had enough energy to come back into the house. By the time all this rolled around, our youngest was in elementary school and he took care of me more than I took care of him. Now, remember a minute ago, I said that, I wasn't being the kind of mom I wanted to be. That's one of the reasons I left corporate. And then I created this whole different scenario where I wasn't really being the kind of mom I wanted to be. My son was in second grade by that point, and my husband would come home from a long day of work and he'd make dinner because I had zero energy to help in any of that kind of stuff. By then, I was on the couch, didn't have enough energy to come to the kitchen table for a family meal. My husband would make the meal. He'd cut the food up like you would for a toddler. And then my son would come and help me eat. And you can't get much more humbling than that. um, and I think about all the things that he had to do to grow up so quickly. Now, I am amazingly fortunate that I was able to be introduced to solo business owners who were able to help me figure all that stuff out. I ended up firing all my doctors because they weren't listening to me. They didn't believe me when I told them what I was doing. At the time, I was also about 230 pounds. And the sicker I got, the higher my weight went. And so then I was doing things like trying to limit my calorie intake and, all those things, thinking maybe I'll have more energy if I could drop this weight. And there was such a perfect storm of medical mess that I just had going on. But I was able to connect with this really amazingly fabulous solo business owner who listened to me. He listened. And he believed what I said. He's like, okay, what you're saying doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that means we're missing something, right? And he helped me figure it out. I'm here today, and have so much more energy and so much more excitement about life. But it was actually working with him that made it really clear the type of people that I wanted to work with. I ultimately had I had a lot of reality that I had to come to of like, I was fully responsible for where I ended up with my health. Um, what could I do to really live my values? And so I sat back and I explored all of that.
I am, I mean, just, I'm still wowed. I, I know we had chatted a little bit about this before, but to hear it again in the way that you described it is, it's very powerful. And I think my personal experience, and I know so many other women, there's elements in your story that I'm like, yes, I remember being there 100%. And just, it, if I do this, then this will be better. And when I get here, then this will be better. And when all the good work that I'm doing, why would I stop good work? I could never stop good work. I mean, I'm impacting people's lives here. Like these people need me, like, and just not to put words in your mouth, but that's how I was, and then to not have the practice, the habit, or the community around us to go, do you see what you're giving up? Like, I talked to a client yesterday who said, oh, I could never do that. It would really hurt my mom. And I'm like, so you're going to go over here and sit in like shit land because you don't want to tell your mom that one thing. But if you do get through this, your mom will be that, what? How would your mom feel if you got through this? And she'd be like, oh yeah, that's a whole different. I'm like, right. Because the people that we are here, that we feel that we want to serve the most, the ones that we care about deeply, the people that we love, they just want us to be fucking happy. And and yet we externalize all of the things and be like, when they are happy, then I am happy. Well, nobody's happy when that happens. And, and not to again make an assumption, but for your son, he just wants mommy to be happy, and so we'll do any of those things.
And the reality is the more I started working on me. So I rebuilt my entire business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hadn't started with a good foundation of what I really wanted in life. I had done what I thought I needed to do to make money, right? So not everybody has to redo their entire business. Sometimes it's just a mindset shift or a tweak here or there. My case was extreme, right? But I redid my entire business so that I could have a structure in place that allowed me to live my values, the things I really said were super important, while still providing really exceptional service to my clients. And you can have both.
Yes.
And I think I didn't believe that for a while. I believed that it had to be a give and a take. I believed that I had to hustle and work super, super hard. But you don't have to. Really don't have to. You can build out structures and you can build in healthy boundaries that allow you to live a really joyous life and have a successful business. I call it having a life-loving business. And the more that I did all the internal work too, lots and lots, of internal work, and I still do.
Right.
I still do. But the more that I worked on me, the happier my entire family was. The more that I worked on me, the more my son was going out and playing with friends rather than feeding his mom, and there was huge mindset shifts. I actually divorced hard work.
Yeah.
Um, I said, there because I was raised in the Midwest in the United States, and Midwesterners are known as being hard workers,
Sure.
right? If you work hard, you're going to get what you want. And there's an element of truth to that. But frequently that hard work mentality turns into something that's less positive for a lot of people. And I happen to be one of those people. And it was a family value that I had to learn how to let go, which those are often harder than others, right? It's like, ooh,
That's like pre-generational. That's been with you since,
yeah.
before you were
Oh,
before you were a thing.
right, exactly. Where was a twinkle in dad's eye? You know, I so I literally sat down and wrote divorce papers because like in my mind at the time, that was something that was formal and final and something that my subconscious could grab onto.
Hmm.
And I decided to have a healthy divorce, not a contentious one, right? I was going to let go of hard work in lieu of excellent work.
Yes.
And you can have excellence without killing yourself.
Right. That you're hitting on something so massive and so powerful. The, you know, and I haven't met anybody on this podcast from all over the world that hasn't said, well, here where I live, hard work is considered a really bad. It's everywhere.
Mhm.
I think it's the skewed label that we're attributing to hard.
Right.
So I enjoy working. I want to be challenged every day. Every day I want to be like, whoa, that's some stuff there. I mean, I'm just going to go with it. Um, and I want to keep going with that, but I don't want it to feel like, ugh. And when that happens, it takes the ease out. So I lived inside the limiting belief that it has to be hard in order to be of value. So if anything that comes easily to me, it's not worth mentioning. And so the work, we miss our excellence, we sidestep it, we negate it, we push it to the side, and we don't notice that what is attracting people to us is that light, that ease, that sort of who we truly are. And now we may have worked to get there. We build skills and go to school and learn things and meet people and all of those things. But when it's truly aligned with your values, with what you want more of in your life, that vision you have for yourself, the mom you want to be, the wife, the daughter, all those things, it falls into line, and it feels there's ease to it. I would love for everybody to just divorce the current belief system that they're running, that things have to be hard, or that you have to struggle, or you have to hustle, or the things have to be like constantly, there's battle, there's ease there. And if you allow, then the greatness that you are aligned with it sort of just comes to you, and it just is. And so tell me a little bit about those transitional moments when you started to have these, I want to say ahas, but you started to deepen your awareness as to like, oh yeah, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. And you're writing these divorce papers. Tell me about what that was like for you on the inside, and then what did it look like outwardly? how did it impact the others in your world as you were making these shifts?
Well, it's interesting. Excuse me. It depends on some of the shifts that you're talking about. I mean, I will say one of the most impactful moments that I remember in terms of how did it impact other people
Mm.
is I remember being over at my parents' house, and I was working on their house with my brother. And my brother said, "It's so nice to have you back."
Mm.
And I sat there and went, I didn't know I went somewhere, right? I didn't know I had been somewhere. So, that was one of those wow moments. Um, in terms of, different things that I did or things that I put in place, there's a couple things that come to mind that I think could be really helpful for your community. One of them was I put in place what I lovingly call and teach my clients the resentment test.
Mm.
Um, so pre all of this, there was kind of this belief that it had to hurt. I had to earn it, right? And I let go of that. But I'm like, so how do I keep myself honest with that? Because I have built habits over multiple decades, and those habits are going to keep coming up if you don't replace them with different habits. And so one of the things I put in place was the resentment test because I said yes to everything,
Mhm.
everything, didn't know no.
Mhm.
And so the way that a resentment test works is you're asked, will you do X or could you do X? And you sit quietly, you don't respond immediately, and you think about it and you say to yourself, do I feel any resentment about saying yes to this? Any. If you feel any, even if it's this teeny tiny niggly thing that you're like, oh, that's silly, doesn't matter, does not matter. If you feel any little bit of resentment at all, the answer to the question is no. Then the next step is, how could I make that a yes? What would need to change with this circumstance for me to feel good about saying yes? Now, mind you, sometimes the answer is just always no.
Right.
Sometimes no is a complete sentence, and no
Yeah.
is a healthy thing to say sometimes. But frequently, when we end up in this really resentful state about our life or our obligations or the work that we have or the volunteer stuff we've taken on, whatever, the activities in our life, it's frequently because of these tiny resentments that add up and add up and add up,
Mhm.
right? So if you can circumvent those to begin with and go into minor negotiations, well, I can't do that on this day, but I could 2 days from then. Would that work for you?
Mhm.
Well, I would really love to help you with A, B, and C, but I can't do that for free.
Oh, that's a good one.
When I work with clients, they invest this for that type of work, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of those. There's lots of those. And it's okay for you to ask for what you want. The other
Mhm.
person can always say no. But, that's okay.
Right.
But if you can get really clear about what it is that you want,
Mhm.
the amazing thing is when you ask for it, you almost always get it.
Right?
And life is so much better. Like I loved you saying be fucking happy at the top of your to-do list. Yes, more please.
Yes.
And it is possible. It is possible. Now, I acknowledge that there are people that are living in circumstances where maybe what I just shared isn't as easy.
Right.
But it does come with practice and habit.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I put in place, and I still do now. Now it's habit. I had to teach myself to ask those things over and over again. Now I naturally go into the resentment test, and it's a really fast process for me.
Right.
The other thing is I have a reminder over here. You can't see it, but I can. That says, "What's the fastest, simplest, easiest, pain-free, and fun way to achieve fill in the blank?"
Yes.
Because oftentimes the first thing that comes to our mind isn't that.
Mhm.
But if we ask ourselves that question, we start getting creative.
Mhm.
Like, oh, wait a minute, if I did it this way. But we have to give ourselves permission to do that.
I think
And
that is
nobody else is going to give yourself that permission. You've got to give it to yourself.
absolutely, and I apologize. I just
Oh,
that permission piece is so powerful, and I remember in my early days of like me, um, recognizing that I didn't know I was allowed to want things.
right. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember wanting lots, but wanting in the like lowest vibrational sense of want, like coveting kind of want.
Okay.
Like, oh, I see them doing that. I wish I had that. Oh, I wish I could do those things. Or I wish I was that kind of person and that kind of bullshit. And I started getting creative. I started doing art, which was lovely. But I remember being like, I want new markers. I'm allowed. I'm allowed to want that, and I'm allowed to have that. And because there's joy, like it was just this idea of like acknowledging where my joy resides and connecting my desires or my future plan around joy. Whereas in the past, it was more like, you know, trying to avoid feeling like crap as opposed to moving towards something that was actually joyful. And it's definitely one of the first things that, I ask all my coaching clients, what do you want? Knowing full well it's going to be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And so giving yourself permission to want and then practicing all of the work, I say work, but all of the strategies and the, thought patterns and the mantras and the actions and all those things, and creating the habits that make the vision of your life joy filled, just like it just is. A friend of mine, we were talking about um battling change and trying to manage life and all the upheaval that we had been going through. And she said, I know self-care is really important, and I know everybody says that. She's like, I really noticed that when I spend a little bit of time scrapbooking, I'm like much calmer, and I feel way more in control. And I'm like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, so I really need to like carve out time and scrapbook, and I really need to make time for that, knowing that it's a good thing for me. I'm like, you know what? If you truly believed that, like when you get to that space where you truly, truly believe it, you won't be making time for anything. It will be non-negotiable. It just will be. Like it's not up for debate anymore. It's not something that you would look at and go, I'm going to not do that and do something else, because that idea of your value, your worth, and then what you can give as a result of having scrapbooked for a half an hour,
Right.
is in full alignment with the joy and the yes and the duh, right? And it all starts with this idea of permission, because really what we're often doing is we're having to look at our current belief systems and going, yeah, no, I don't think that's working for me. And then when we work to believe something else, to lean into something new, well, it's uncomfortable because it's new and I've never done that before. And then you have to practice. You can practice believing in this, and practice wanting things, and practice doing that alignment work. And I love that you have it posted. I'm a huge fan of that continuous visual reminder, and triggering your brain to do the work for you and be like, oh yeah, got to be fun. Like uh, that would be a game changer, for a lot of people, to just have that. Oh, if that's the filter I'm running things through, if it's a lens I'm just going to put in front of a decision, then it just is. Then and it's going to change the outcome. It's going to change, my response inside this situation, and it's going to make my life different. And because I am the one with all the power. You had said this earlier about taking that responsibility for your experience, where you ended up. And I wholeheartedly believe that that is the primary number one. Like when you get to that space where you're like, oh, this is on me, and not I'm the one, I didn't make these things happen necessarily, but I'm the one who's experiencing it now. So if I am, insert any crappy thing here, then that I'm in control of that. And so I love that that was something you had mentioned early on in what you were sharing. because I think it's such a powerful experience. And to know that you built from there and have now, restructured your business, and you are now supporting people to do the same. It's such a valuable, say skill set, but it's such a valuable energy field to bring to the planet. And so tell me a little bit about the work that you do, and what you share with your clients to help them to get from what is a very stuck place to this sort of enlightened state of joy and fun and bliss and
Yes, Stephanie. I mean, and that sounds very rah rah. I mean, even doing the rah rah move, right?
Yeah.
There's some really difficult things
Mhm.
that people are facing, and I do not minimize that at all, not at all. But there is the reality around how we face them that can make a difference. So, I work with extremely smart, energetic uh, entrepreneurs, business owners, um, knowledge holders who are service focused, and they really have a desire to do big things in the world. And they want to create also a highly profitable, what I lovingly call life loving business of impact and meaning and guilt free freedom. Most of the people I work with are freedompreneurs, right? They got into business because they didn't want to be stuck in a job. That was
Right.
right. Now, frequently, their number one problem is that they're working harder than they'd like to. They may be at a point in their business where they're moving really quickly, but they'd like to experience more growth without feeling like they have to give up the rest of their life for it. Um, Now, most of them went into business, like I said, because they wanted to experience some kind of freedom. But often they are experiencing visibility blocks or money blocks or systems that don't serve them. And they're not experiencing the joy that they desire and really that they deserve, right? They deserve. Um, Deep down, they usually know that they're standing in their own way,
Mhm.
um, but they don't necessarily know what to do about that. Sometimes they've experienced fast results in their business, but now they find themselves in this painful place because the success that they've created, at whatever level of success they have created, has come back to haunt them in some way.
Mhm.
And they're spending way more time in their business than they want to, in the name of success, but maybe they haven't defined success as clearly as they could to be beneficial for them. And they've lost the freedom that they were seeking in the first place. And the saddest thing is that when they get sucked into working this way, they often find that they're lacking in other areas of their life. So sometimes, like in my story, their relationships or their health might be suffering, or maybe they have feelings of guilt because they're not spending time in the way that they had wanted to. My clients are typically the ones that are pedaling the hardest, but they're not getting the traction that they need and want that will lead them to the freedom that they're looking for. And so my approach is holistic.
Mm.
I work with my clients on internal mindset as well as outer strategy, tactics, systems, that type of thing. Often business owners have these internal blocks that show up when they try to grow. And I want to emphasize that this happens at all levels of business.
Mm.
I've worked with people that are brand new in business, and I've worked with multimillionaires, and every single one of them has hit this point where they're at this point of growth, and bam, these blocks come up, and I work together with them on figuring out how to, in a healthy way, work through the mindset things and the system things to move their business forward in an aligned way.
Mm.
And we de-stress their business and help them get out of their own way and leverage every ounce of their brilliance, but do it in a way that's not painful, right? Joy, ease and
Yeah.
ease and joy is the goal. And I mean, my clients work, right?
Right.
I am not I'm not that make money fast, get rich quick. That's that's not me. I mean, there's
Right.
real work that is involved in the work that I do with my clients. But it's really about building something that is sustainable and
Mm.
is joyous at the end of the day.
That's so fantastic and so needed. And, the more that I investigate and get clear on what a successful business looks like for me, the more I recognize that some of the more stereotypical mindsets or ideas around what makes success happen doesn't align with the energies that I want to bring into the world. So, whether someone is looking at that, like balancing the feminine and the masculine energy or the yin and the yang, or however you look at it, but the idea that it's a holistic, that you are a being and that you are doing work and being of service, that it's all of you. It isn't just this part that goes out and makes the money and this part that comes home and has the family. Like it's you, especially as a solopreneur. um I'm so grateful that you are doing this work and supporting people in that way. It's such a valuable thing. And so for the people who are listening, who are at any stage of their entrepreneurial journey, this is a really important piece that you don't always get in some more masculine energy or business, how to's, here's the 4 steps to this and then create the multi-million dollar whatever. Because there is work, because the work is done by, like, you have to uncover what do you want and what matters to you, and what you are willing to do and what that looks like, and how your family intertwines with that, and where you choose to live and what you want to spend your time on, all your time, and getting that clarity that will help you then determine what you do with the service that you have, the skills that you have, the brilliance that you bring to the world, all of those pieces. So if you are listening, this is really fucking important. This isn't something you can sidestep while you're making your business. This is a crucial aspect.
Well, it's a foundational piece, and
Yeah.
so I have a couple different degrees. One is in computer science,
Mm.
and one is in HR and marketing, and those are really like how to systematic type things, right?
Sure.
So when I first started my business, uh, I was working solely focused on those specialty areas, right? And and I would sit there and I'm like, okay, we're building systems that are exactly aligned to these people, and yet stuff's just not going the way that I would like to see it go. And the clients were happy, right?
Mhm.
I wasn't. I'm like, there's so much more that could happen here. And I feel like there's this missing piece. Well, the missing piece was me allowing myself to take this other part of me that does look deeper, because I don't like the shallow end of the pool. That's who I am. I get very bored with the shallow end of the pool. But I wasn't giving myself permission that when I heard mindset stuff, or when I saw them self-sabotaging in one way or another, I was sticking to the business strategy stuff.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Once I gave myself permission to be holistic, which again, permission, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Permission. Once I gave myself permission to really address my clients' needs in a holistic way, results skyrocketed. Results skyrocketed. You know, I say I am not a relationship coach, right? Not what I do.
Nope.
I help people with their businesses, and help them get past the blocks that are keeping them from the goals that they have. And some people I work with aren't necessarily business owners. Some people are like leaders within a business as well.
Right.
Same type of idea. But one of my favorite stories is a client. She was so amazing, just so brilliant. And she had hired um, another individual to help her with her business. And this other individual gave her a blueprint and said, do this.
Right.
And her sales plummeted.
Mm.
She had 7 months with no sales by the time that she and I spoke. She felt like a failure. She was very down on herself. This other mastermind that she had bought into, when she was trying to express, here's what I'm doing and it's not working, with you're not trying hard enough. And so her self-worth just kept getting lower and lower and lower. And I'm like, well, this is a crime. This should not happen. If you are working with somebody that makes you feel like garbage, find somebody else to work with. Yeah. That is not a coach.
No.
Sorry, soapbox there for a minute. Ultimately, what we found is that she wasn't this mastermind that she bought into wasn't a match for who she was and what her goals were.
Right.
They wanted her on the stage, traveling the country, speaking and selling, which is a very viable method. It's a method that I've implemented with certain clients. But in her case, she had a very young son and she didn't want to be on the road all the time. So of course she wasn't getting on the stage to speak, because there was this deeper part of her that felt like she was being torn away from her family every time she was traveling to speak and sell from the stage. Yeah. The minute we uncovered, and that was simple, right? The minute we uncovered that and said, okay, well, let's sell in a different way. What's a different way that we could sell? She sold 2 5-figure programs within a month. Right. So it's okay to recognize what's working, and it's okay to recognize what's not working, and be really true to yourself, and build out a business that works for who you are, not for who somebody else is.
Right. Brilliant. And that self-awareness is what leads to the ease,
right,
that you want to be generating.
And with that, so when that client hired me, I work in defined timelines. We have specific goals and results we're going to go for, and we work within set timeframes. And her husband was 100% against her wasting more money with yet another coach.
Right.
Very, very against it. It was a month worth of conversations with her to say, okay, well, how can we make this work? And she ended up working with me. And within the first 2 months of working together, her husband called me and said, thank you for giving me my wife back. Because she was no longer, she was back to being her brilliant, confident self, right? She was back to believing in herself. And sometimes we don't realize that we've lost that part of ourselves. So, that's why I say, if you're working with somebody that makes you feel like crap, leave, get out.
Right. And to go back to what your brother had said about, so glad to have you back. It is those moments that will transpire. You're doing these things and it doesn't feel good, and not even acknowledging that it's like people are seeing this, yet you're the only one that can help yourself. So you have to do that work. Stephanie, this has been brilliant. I am so grateful for you and this amazing conversation, and for your willingness to share your journey and what some of those moments were like before you were able to say yes to you. So thank you so much for being with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Join Dion again next week to learn more about what you can do to go from hot mess to awesomeness.